Close friends come to cry, pray, and remember 35-year-old dentist Dr. Kendra Hatcher. She was shot and killed Wednesday evening in the garage of her Uptown Dallas luxury apartment. Gail Morvay came out of concern and curiosity.
I was actually looking for it. They have a lot of gables, and I wanted to see how close it was to my house.
Investigators Thursday made a public plea for help in identifying whoever's driving this older model Jeep Cherokee. The vehicle has damaged or faded paint on the hood and paper tags. Police say the vehicle followed a car into the parking garage, and moments later, when Hatcher pulled in and parked, a single gunshot was heard, and this vehicle was seen driving out of the garage.
It's tragedy that you can't even be safe, but you pay attention everywhere.
It was the evening of September 2nd, 2015, in the Uptown district of Dallas, Texas. A successful pediatric dentist pulled into her apartment's underground parking garage after a long day at work. She was 35 years old, beautiful, accomplished, deeply in love with her boyfriend of 3 months. She had no idea someone was waiting in the shadows with a loaded gun. She had no idea that a black Jeep Cherokee had been circling the garage for 25 minutes, tracking her movements. She had no idea that the woman who ordered her execution was someone she had never even met, someone consumed by jealous rage. The shooter approached as she stepped out of her car. Witnesses later said they heard her scream, heard her beg for her life. One gunshot to the back of the head. Dr. Kendra Hatcher collapsed to the concrete floor, her cell phone left behind, her purse stolen to make it look like a robbery. Within minutes, she was dead, and then came the most shocking revelation. Police identified the mastermind behind this brutal murder as a woman Kendra had never wronged, never spoken to, never even knew existed. A dental hygienist student named Brenda Delgado, who couldn't accept that her ex-boyfriend had moved on. A woman so obsessed with getting him back that she hired 2 accomplices to kill his new girlfriend. Authorities confirmed this wasn't a crime of passion. This was cold, calculated, premeditated murder. And so, we are left with the chilling question that haunts this case. How does unrequited love turn into a death sentence for an innocent woman? If you're into real true crime stories that dig deep into facts and uncover the darkness behind them, make sure you hit that subscribe button right now. Crime Case Confidential brings you new cases every single week. Stories that need to be told, victims who deserve justice, and truth that can't be ignored. Let's talk about the victim first, because before she became a headline, before her name was attached to a murder case, Dr. Kendra Hatcher was a living, breathing person with dreams, goals, and a life she'd worked incredibly hard to build. Kendra was 35 years old when she died. She was a pediatric dentist at a practice called Smile Zone in Irving, Texas, just outside Dallas. And if you talk to anyone who knew her, patients, co-workers, friends, they'd all tell you the same thing. Kendra had this way of making people feel comfortable. She worked with kids from disadvantaged backgrounds. And anyone who's ever worked with children knows that takes a special kind of patience and warmth. She wasn't just good at her job. She genuinely cared about the kids she treated, making sure they weren't scared, making sure they left with a smile. Kendra grew up in Pleasant Plains, Illinois, a tiny town with a population of less than 800 people. She'd even traveled to Ecuador during dental school to perform free dental work for children there. By the time she was 35, she'd built a successful career, earned respect in her field, and created a life she was proud of. But here's the thing that made Kendra truly happy in 2015. She'd found love. His name was Dr. Ricardo Ricky Paniagua. He was a dermatologist completing his residency at UT Southwestern Medical Center. Handsome, successful, charming. They'd met on Tinder in May 2015, so they'd only been dating about 3.5 months by the time she was killed. But those 3 months, they were good, really good. Friends said Kendra and Ricky were that couple, the kind that made you believe in love again. They talked about the future. They'd even started a wedding fund together, saving up for the life they were planning to build. They hadn't officially gotten engaged yet, but everyone who knew them could see where it was headed. And on September 2nd, 2015, the night Kendra was murdered, they were supposed to be packing for a trip to Cancun the next morning, a romantic getaway. Just the 2 of them, celebrating their relationship and dreaming about what came next. Kendra had no idea that someone was watching her. She had no idea that a woman she'd never met, a woman whose name she probably never even heard, was obsessing over her every move. That woman was Brenda Delgado. Now, if you looked at Brenda on the surface, she seemed normal, harmless even. She was 33 years old, studying to become a dental hygienist at Sanford Brown College in Dallas. She'd previously worked as a dental assistant after graduating high school, and she had a side job whitening teeth at a day spa in North Park Center, a high-end mall in North Dallas. To people who knew her casually, Brenda was quiet, reserved, maybe a little sad sometimes. But nothing about her screamed dangerous, except she was. Brenda had dated Ricky Paniagua for 2.5 years, from August 2012 to February 2015. They'd met at a Jennifer Lopez concert, and for a while, they were inseparable. But the relationship wasn't healthy. Brenda was obsessive, jealous, constantly checking up on Ricky, always worried about where he was and who he was with. When Ricky finally ended things in February 2015, Brenda completely unraveled. She couldn't accept it. She refused to believe it was over. Even after the breakup, she kept his email and iCloud passwords. She tracked his iPhone location using a Find My Phone app. She kept a key to his apartment and would let herself in when he wasn't home. She would drive by his place, show up at restaurants where he was eating, stalk him around Dallas. She saved every photo she could find him with Kendra on social media, studying them, seething over them. Ricky had moved on. He was happy. He was building a future with Kendra. But Brenda? She was spiraling into something dark. Her former roommate, Jennifer Escobar, would later testify in court with chilling words. She was mad all the time. I kind of understood her anger. But at the same time, she was super obsessed with him. And here's where it gets truly chilling. Brenda didn't just fantasize about getting rid of Kendra. She started planning it. She asked her cousin, Moses Martinez, to beat Kendra with a baseball bat, initially saying she just wanted to scare her, though he testified she wanted him to beat her to death. She even offered to pay his child support or give him a car. He refused, thinking she was just drunk. She offered her friend Jennifer Escobar $2,000, drugs, and a car to kill Kendra, describing methods like stabbing her with a drug-filled needle or beating her to death. Escobar refused and moved out in mid-August 2015, terrified. But Brenda didn't give up. She just kept looking until she found people who would say yes. And that's how a dental hygienist student with no criminal record became the mastermind behind one of Dallas's most shocking murders. September 2nd, 2015 started like any other Wednesday for Dr. Kendra Hatcher. She woke up in her apartment at Gables Park 17 in Uptown Dallas, probably excited about the trip to Cancun she and Ricky were taking the next day. She got ready for work, drove to Smile Zone in Irving, and spent the day doing what she loved, taking care of kids, making them smile, being the kind of dentist that parents actually trusted. It was a long day, but a good one. That evening, Kendra finished work early and headed home. Ricky was at her apartment, though he'd briefly left to grab some tacos, but he was planning to be back so they could spend the evening together before their vacation the next day. But while Kendra was driving home, completely unaware, two people were already in position. Crystal Cortez, a 23-year-old woman, was behind the wheel of a black 1996 Jeep Cherokee. Sitting next to her was Christopher Love, a 31-year-old man with a violent criminal record. 12 prior arrests involving 6 violent offenses. He had a gun, and he had orders. The orders came from Brenda Delgado. According to trial testimony, Brenda had been planning this for weeks. She'd stalked Kendra's dental office with night vision binoculars, watching from across the street. She'd tracked Ricky's phone using the Find Me app to figure out Kendra's routine and where she lived. She knew where Kendra worked. She knew what kind of car she drove. She knew when she'd be coming home. And on September 2nd, deliberately chosen because Kendra and Ricky were leaving for Cancun the next day, she sent Crystal and Christopher to finish what she'd been fantasizing about for months. At 7:13 p.m., surveillance cameras captured the black Jeep entering the visitor area of the parking garage at Gables Park 17. At 7:17 p.m., it followed another vehicle through the security gate into the underground parking structure. Then they waited. Crystal Cortez would later testify about those minutes in the garage. She said they circled around, looking for Kendra's car. They knew what it looked like. They knew she'd be arriving soon. And at 7:42 p.m., Kendra Hatcher pulled into the parking garage. She parked on the last row, stepped out her car, probably reaching for her purse, maybe checking her phone, thinking about the evening ahead with Ricky and their trip tomorrow. That's when Christopher Love made his move. He got out of the Jeep and approached her. Witnesses who were in the parking garage that night, people heading to their own apartments, people coming home from work, would later testify about what they heard. Screaming. One resident, Hashim Saad, was near the parking garage elevator when he heard what he described as animal-like screaming. He immediately called 911, telling the dispatcher he heard screaming and 1 or 2 gunshots. Crystal Cortez, sitting in the Jeep, heard it too. She testified at trial with chilling clarity. "I hear Kendra scream, 'Help, help, help me,' and then I hear the shots fired." Kendra was begging for her life. But Christopher Love didn't hesitate. According to forensic evidence presented at trial, Kendra raised her hands behind her head, a defensive position, trying to protect herself. Gunshot residue was found on the backs of her hands, proving they were raised when the shot was fired. And that's when Love pulled the trigger. One shot. The bullet entered the back of Kendra's head and exited under her chin, traveling from back to front and downward. It severed her spinal cord instantly. An abrasion on her chest showed her chin had been pressed down near her chest when she was shot, an execution-style killing. Dr. Kendra Hatcher collapsed to the concrete floor of the parking garage. Love grabbed her tan Coach purse and her Nikon camera. This was supposed to look like a robbery, remember? That was part of Brenda's plan. Make it look random. Make it look like Kendra was just in the wrong place at the wrong time. But he left her cell phone behind. A real robber would have taken it. That detail would later become one of many red flags for investigators. Love ran back to the Jeep, Kendra's belongings in his hands. Crystal Cortez hit the gas, and by 7:44 p.m., just 2 minutes after Kendra arrived, the Jeep was speeding out of the parking garage behind a silver Corvette. 2 minutes. That's all it took to end a life. Upstairs, Ricky Paniagua had returned to Kendra's apartment. He was texting her, wondering where she was. Minutes passed, then more minutes. His texts went unanswered. His concern turned to worry, then to panic. He had no idea that the woman he loved was lying dead in the parking garage just floors below him. And he had no idea that his ex-girlfriend, the woman he'd broken up with 7 months earlier, had just destroyed both of their lives.
A calculated, cold-blooded murder or a random robbery gone bad? Those are the questions and fears running through a prominent Uptown apartment building where a dentist was shot to death Wednesday night. One of the only clues police have is a picture of a person of interest, a person driving a Jeep. Fox 4's James Rose is at the Gables Park Apartments where it happened. All right, James, I know that investigators have been talking to a lot of people, and there were some witnesses. Anything more solid than just this picture of the Jeep right now?
At this point, no, but I can tell you I spoke with the medical examiner's office late this afternoon, and I am told that Dr. Hatcher did die of a single gunshot wound to the head and neck. And as far as police, again, they're just telling residents and people that come to this area, again, very popular area, a lot of people come here to eat, they're telling them to just be very vigilant, be aware of your surroundings as they continue to investigate this. And as you said, their best clue is that Jeep Cherokee.
Within days of Kendra Hatcher's murder, Dallas police knew this wasn't a random robbery. The scene didn't add up. The cell phone left behind. The precision of the attack. The fact that the killer seemed to know exactly when Kendra would arrive. This was planned. This was targeted. And when detectives pulled surveillance footage from the parking garage, they had their first major break. The black 1996 Jeep Cherokee. The vehicle belonged to a man named Jose Luis Ortiz. When police tracked him down, he told them he'd loaned the Jeep to Brenda Delgado, a woman he knew, and Brenda had asked to borrow it on September 2nd, the exact day of the murder. That led investigators to Crystal Cortez, a 23-year-old woman who lived with her mother in East Oak Cliff, a neighborhood in Dallas. Brenda had given Crystal the borrowed Jeep to use as the getaway vehicle. On September 5th, 3 days after the murder, Police arrested Crystal and brought her in for questioning. And Crystal? She didn't break immediately. She lied. Multiple times. First, she said she was just looking for parking at a Mexican restaurant. Then she claimed her 6-year-old son was with her and they were going to a park. Then she invented an armed carjacker named Lamar who forced her at gunpoint to drive the Jeep. But when detectives showed her the surveillance footage that clearly showed no child in the vehicle, her story finally collapsed. Crystal admitted she was a getaway driver. She gave police a phone number for the man she called Lamar. And when detectives traced that number, it led them to Christopher Love's address in Dallas, where they eventually recovered the murder weapon. But the bombshell came when Crystal told them who had orchestrated the entire plot, Brenda Delgado. When police heard that name, they started digging, and what they found was chilling. Brenda wasn't some random stranger with a grudge. She was Ricky Paniagua's ex-girlfriend, the woman he dated for 2.5 years, from August 2012 to February 2015, before breaking up with her. The woman who couldn't accept that he'd moved on with Kendra. According to Crystal's testimony, Brenda had approached her about 2 weeks after they met in August 2015 with a proposition. She wanted Kendra dead. She was willing to pay for it. Crystal said Brenda offered her $500 to be the getaway driver. The day after the murder, Crystal took a photo of $500 in bills folded into a heart shape, evidence that would later be presented at trial. Brenda recruited Christopher Love to be the shooter, promising him approximately $3,000 in cash and drugs. Though Love ultimately received only about $900 worth of drugs, the promise was enough to get him on board. But here's the thing. Brenda didn't have that kind of money. She was a dental hygienist student at Sanford Brown College, working multiple jobs as a dental assistant and whitening teeth at a day spa in North Park Center. Her parents had immigrated from Mexico. Her father worked construction. She wasn't rich. So what was driving her? What made her willing to orchestrate a murder she could barely afford? Jealousy. Pure, obsessive jealousy. Crystal testified that Brenda told her Kendra was the reason that Ricky had stopped paying her attention. In Brenda's mind, if Kendra disappeared, Ricky would come back to her. It was delusional thinking, but it was enough to make her plan a murder. And the planning? That was methodical. That was calculated. Brenda had been obsessed with Kendra for months. She stalked Kendra's social media, saving photos of her with Ricky on her phone. She saved screenshots of his text messages, his travel reservations, even his social security number. Then it escalated. Brenda bought binoculars, night vision binoculars, according to one detailed account. Court documents confirmed that she and Crystal would sit across the street from Kendra's dental office in Irving at a Salvation Army store, watching her through windows, tracking her movements, learning her routine. She tracked Ricky's iPhone constantly, using his iCloud password to access Apple's location features. That's how she figured out where Kendra lived, when she came and went, what her schedule looked like. The conspirators even surveilled Kendra's apartment complex, parking the visitor area and following residents to learn how to access the garage. And then Brenda made a crucial decision about timing. According to Crystal's testimony, they deliberately chose September 2nd because Brenda knew Kendra and Ricky were leaving for Cancun the next day. They also knew the couple planned to move to San Francisco after the trip, which created urgency. This was Brenda's last chance. Crystal testified about Brenda's explicit instructions. It was planned to be a murder to look like a robbery gone bad. That's why Love took Kendra's purse and camera. That's why they staged it to look random. Brenda even had Crystal try to obtain a silencer for the gun. Crystal contacted a firearms dealer through social media asking about one for a .40 caliber Smith & Wesson. A video recorded on Brenda's phone captured 2 women discussing the silencer plan. But that attempt failed. Underneath all the planning, underneath all the surveillance and strategy, the motive was heartbreakingly simple. Brenda Delgado couldn't handle the fact that Ricky Paniagua had moved on. She couldn't accept that he'd matched with Kendra on Tinder, that he'd found happiness with someone else. She couldn't let go. Her former roommate Jennifer Escobar testified about Brenda's state of mind in the months before the murder, using words that still echo. She was mad all the time. I kind of understood her anger, but at the same time, She was super obsessed with him. Escobar also testified that Brenda told her directly what she wanted. She just wanted to eliminate Kendra Hatcher, or both of them. Not hurt her, not scare her, eliminate her. Prosecutor Kevin Brooks would later tell the jury during closing arguments. That beautiful soul, Kendra Hatcher, she didn't know this lady. The only person in a love triangle was Brenda Delgado, and it's a love triangle she created. Kendra had done nothing wrong. She hadn't stolen Ricky from anyone. He was single when they met. She hadn't taunted Brenda or provoked her. She literally didn't know Brenda existed. But in Brenda's twisted mind, Kendra was the obstacle. Remove Kendra and Ricky would come back. It was delusional. It was evil. But it was enough to make Brenda Delgado orchestrate a murder. By September 5th, 2015, just 3 days after Kendra's murder, Dallas police had Crystal Cortez in custody and her confession on record.
Were you an integral part of the planning of this offense?
Yes, I was.
Wearing a green jail jumpsuit and still in handcuffs, Crystal Cortez spoke without flinching.
When did the planning for this start?
Probably 2 weeks after I met Brenda, we started planning this murder.
For 2 hours, she told jurors of the cold-blooded plan to kill a stranger, Dr. Kendra Hatcher, for $500.
We would follow her from her job to her house. We pretty much just found out her daily routine.
Dr. Hatcher had begun dating Ricardo Paniagua, Brenda Delgado's ex. Prosecutors say the pair still shared a cell phone account, so Delgado was able to keep up with Paniagua's whereabouts.
She would find him on the Find Me app, and that's how she knew where Kendra lived, and she would follow Ricky that way.
Then on the evening of September 2nd, 2015, Cortez says she and the defendant, Christopher Love, followed another vehicle into Kendra Hatcher's Uptown area parking garage and waited for her to arrive.
When I heard the shots fired, I knew that he had killed Kendra Hatcher, and that's when I went ahead and hit the reverse.
Crystal Cortez is, by her own admission, a cold-blooded killer. She is also, defense attorneys point out, a pathological liar.
You were just became afraid that you were going to be possibly facing the maximum penalty for this crime. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
They knew Brenda Delgado was the mastermind. They knew she'd orchestrated everything. They had witnesses. They had evidence. They had a clear conspiracy to commit murder. But here's where the case took an unexpected turn. When detectives brought Brenda in for questioning on September 4th and 5th, they didn't have enough evidence yet to charge her with murder. So they arrested her on outstanding traffic warrants instead. She paid the fine. And that same night, they had to let her go. Within hours of her release, Brenda disappeared. She fled to Mexico. By the time Dallas police secured a capital murder arrest warrant on October 2nd, 2015, nearly a month after murder, Brenda was already out of reach. She crossed the border, using her family connections in Mexico to vanish into the country where her parents had been born. She thought she could hide forever, and for 7 months, she did. While Kendra Hatcher's family grieved, while Ricky Paniagua tried to process the horror of what his ex-girlfriend had done, while Dallas homicide detectives built their case, Brenda Delgado was living in Mexico, staying with relatives, keeping her head down. But here's the twist that changed everything. The FBI got involved. In April 2016, 7 months after murder, the FBI did something extraordinary. They added Brenda Delgado to their 10 most wanted fugitives list. This wasn't just a local murder case anymore. This was a federal manhunt. The FBI doesn't add people to that list lightly. It's reserved for the most dangerous, most wanted criminals in America. On April 6, 2016, Brenda became the 506th person and only the 9th woman in FBI history to be placed on that list. Her face was on billboards across Texas. Her story was featured on America's Most Wanted. News outlets picked it up nationally. The FBI offered a reward of up to $100,000 for information leading to her capture. And that pressure? It worked. The FBI coordinated with Mexican authorities, sharing intelligence, tracking leads, putting pressure on anyone who might be harboring her. Mexican law enforcement started closing in. They identified the areas where Brenda had been hiding. They tracked her movements. They found people who'd seen her, sheltered her, helped her stay hidden. And on April 8, 2016, just 2 days after being added to the most wanted list, Mexican authorities arrested Brenda Delgado in Torreon, Coahuila, a city in northern Mexico about 300 miles from the Texas border. She was taken into custody without incident. No dramatic chase. No standoff. Just handcuffs and the end of her freedom. But here's where it gets complicated. Extradition. Mexico has strict laws about extraditing suspects who might face the death penalty. Under the U.S.-Mexico Extradition Treaty, the Mexican government can refuse to hand over fugitives unless American prosecutors promise not to seek capital punishment. For Kendra's family, that was a bitter pill to swallow. This was a premeditated, cold-blooded murder for hire. This was the kind of case where the death penalty seemed justified. But prosecutors had a choice: accept the extradition terms and bring Brenda to trial, or refuse and let her stay in Mexico, possibly avoiding justice altogether. Dallas County District Attorney Susan Hawk made the call. She agreed to take the death penalty off the table. Brenda spent 6 months in a Mexico City prison while the extradition was finalized. And on October 6, 2016, she was put on a plane back to Dallas, landing at DFW International Airport around 6 p.m. She was immediately booked into the Dallas County Jail and charged with capital murder.
FBI's most wanted woman behind bars tonight. Brenda Delgado was taken into custody in Mexico. Authorities call her the mastermind behind a murder for hire plot that left a Dallas dentist dead. The arrest coming just 48 hours after investigators made her the 9th woman ever added to their most wanted list. ABC's Philip Mena is in Dallas tonight.
Tonight, the capture of a fugitive. After 7 months on the run, Brenda Delgado now under arrest in northern Mexico. The suspected mastermind behind the murder of Kendra Hatcher, a Dallas dentist who was gunned down in the garage of her apartment building last September.
One female is possibly shot in the neck.
The motive for the plot, investigators say? Jealousy. Hatcher was dating Delgado's former boyfriend.
It was a murder for hire.
Police say the suspected hitman, seen on this surveillance camera leaving the scene, was promised drugs in exchange for killing Hatcher. That man and an alleged getaway driver arrested, but Delgado fled shortly after police questioned her.
What is left to do is to bring her to justice and have her answer for this crime that shocked our community.
Investigators believe Delgado was hiding out in her native Mexico.
By placing her on the top 10 list, it placed pressure on the Mexicans to pick her up. It may also partly expedite the extradition process that's probably going to begin very soon.
To make a deal for her extradition, U.S. officials agreed to take the death penalty off the table. Mexico opposes capital punishment, but Delgado can still fight extradition herself and delay a return here to Dallas for months.
Meanwhile, her co-conspirators were facing their own reckonings. Crystal Cortez, the getaway driver, had already taken a plea deal. In exchange for testifying against both Brenda and Christopher Love, she pleaded guilty to murder, not capital murder, and was sentenced to 35 years in prison. Christopher Love, the shooter, went to trial in October 2018. The jury saw the surveillance footage. They heard Crystal's testimony. They saw the forensic evidence, the gunshot residue on Kendra's hands, the execution-style killing, the staged robbery. It took the jury less than 3 hours to find him guilty of capital murder. And because Love hadn't made any deals, because Mexican extradition wasn't protecting him, prosecutors went for the maximum sentence. The jury took just 3 more hours to sentence Christopher Love to death. He's currently on death row at the Polunsky unit in Livingston, Texas, awaiting execution. His TDCJ number is 999614. He's been there since November 9th, 2018.
Well, basically, detectives say they found the so-called smoking gun. They say they found the murder weapon in Christopher Love's car. They also have video placing him at the crime scene, and they have recorded conversations of him in jail where he talks about the weapon. Now, jurors watched some of the 20 hours worth of video of an interview with Christopher Love. At first, he denies having any involvement or even knowing co-defendants Crystal Cortez and Brenda Delgado. But by the end of the interviews, he admits being at the crime scene, although he claims he did not pull the trigger. Detectives told him they have video of him at the scene. They showed that footage in court. It's from a surveillance camera in the parking garage of Kendra Hatcher's apartment. The video is from far away, but you can see a person get out of the Jeep used in the crime and walk over to where the victim is. Detectives say that person is Christopher Love. And they say, again, they have that murder weapon. Detective Scott Sayers held up the weapon in court. He detailed how they found it. They had a dog from ATF that can detect traces of explosive materials like gunpowder, and they searched Love's car. The dog alerted officers to the weapon, which was hidden in a console.
What we're doing is I'm pulling the plastic back, and you can see underneath where the ashtray is, there's a butt end of a gun.
What did you do when you saw that gun hidden up and under that console?
Celebrated. I mean, high fives, and we were ecstatic.
What's even more incredible is that investigators had phone calls recorded from the jail. They are of conversations between Love and his girlfriend. She asked him, "Why didn't you get rid of the gun if you used it to kill Dr. Hatcher?" He replies, "I know, it was stupid as," and then he uses an expletive. Love told detectives that even though he was at the scene, it was Crystal Cortez who pulled the trigger. Also, detectives say that the video refutes that. His lawyers are trying to paint him, though, as the patsy who will probably get the death penalty if he is convicted, while Brenda Delgado and Crystal Cortez, who are the alleged masterminds behind all of this, will not face the same punishment.
But Brenda Delgado? She had to wait nearly 3 more years for her day in court. Her trial didn't begin until June 3rd, 2019, almost 4 years after Kendra's murder. It ran for 5 days. Her defense attorneys tried everything. They argued she didn't pull the trigger. They argued she shouldn't be held responsible for what Christopher Love did. They tried to paint her as a woman scorned, not a cold-blooded killer. But the prosecution had Crystal Cortez on the stand, telling the jury exactly how Brenda planned every detail. They had the binoculars. They had the surveillance evidence. They had the phone records showing Brenda tracking Ricky's location. They had the photo of the $500 in bills folded into a heart. And they had Ricky Paniagua himself testify about Brenda's obsessive behavior, about how she wouldn't let him go, about how he'd had to change his passwords and his routines because she was always watching. The evidence was overwhelming. On June 7th, 2019, after the prosecution and defense had rested, the jury retired to deliberate, and in one of the fastest verdicts in Dallas County history for a capital murder case, they came back in just 18 minutes. Guilty of capital murder. Because of the extradition agreement with Mexico, the death penalty was off the table, but the judge gave her the next harshest sentence available under Texas law: life in prison without the possibility of parole. Brenda Delgado will never leave prison. She'll never breathe free air again. She'll die behind bars. And the woman who thought she could eliminate her rival and get her ex-boyfriend back, she lost everything.
More than 3 years after the murder of Dallas dentist Kendra Hatcher, the woman accused of arranging her murder is about to learn her fate. Closing arguments are scheduled for tomorrow in the trial for Brenda Delgado. CBS 11's J.D. Miles joins us live from the Dallas County Courthouse, where the prosecution and defense both rested their cases this afternoon. J.D.
Gilma, Brenda Delgado has maintained her innocence ever since she was first questioned by police 2 days after this murder. But today, on the final day of testimony, she chose not to take the stand in her defense. It's the second time family and friends of Kendra Hatcher walked out of a courtroom having endured grim details about the murder of the Dallas dentist.
There was a gunshot wound of the head that went into the neck.
The man who shot and killed Hatcher was sentenced to death row last year. The woman who drove the getaway car is serving 35 years. Now, a jury will soon decide whether the woman accused of paying them to do it will serve a life sentence. Brenda Delgado did not take the stand in her defense, but she did defend herself on this police interrogation video.
There was a plan.
There was no plan, I'm telling you.
There was a plan.
Prosecutors showed the jury how Delgado struggled to explain to a Dallas homicide detective why a friend of hers, Crystal Cortez, would be part of an execution-style murder of a woman she didn't know but Delgado did. Hatcher was dating Delgado's ex-boyfriend.
I have no motives for this guy.
No motives for who?
For Ricky, there's nothing. There's nothing there. There's no motive.
So why do you want his girlfriend dead?
I don't. I didn't even know who he was seeing.
The defense presented just one expert witness who argued that authorities did a sloppy job of tracking cell phone calls and text messages between those involved in the murder for hire plot, including one after the murder that said, quote, "We are all clear, call me." After closing arguments, the jury will deliberate. If they find her guilty, sentencing will be automatic. Because prosecutors had to promise Mexico they would not seek the death penalty, she will face an automatic life sentence.
As of today, Brenda Delgado is serving her life sentence without the possibility of parole at the William P. Hobby Unit in Falls County, Texas. She's 43 years old now. She'll spend the rest of her life behind bars, surrounded by concrete walls and razor wire, paying for a murder she orchestrated out of jealousy and obsession. Her appeals have been denied. The Fifth Court of Appeals in Dallas rejected all 11 issues she raised in October 2021. The Texas Court of Criminal Appeals, the state's highest criminal court, denied her final appeal in February 2022. Her conviction stands. Her fate is sealed. Christopher Love remains on death row at the Polunsky unit, confined to a 60-square-foot cell for 22 to 24 hours a day. Texas hasn't set an execution date yet, but it's coming. The U.S. Supreme Court already denied his appeal in April 2022 by a 6-3 vote. The state's appeals process moves slowly, but it moves forward. One day, Christopher Love will answer for pulling that trigger. Crystal Cortez is serving her 35-year sentence at the Christina Melton Crane Unit in Gatesville, Texas. She cooperated. She testified. She helped put both Brenda and Christopher behind bars. She'll be eligible for parole on March 4th, 2033, almost 18 years from now. But cooperation doesn't erase what she did. She drove the getaway car. She helped plan the murder. And she'll carry the weight of Kendra Hatcher's death for the rest of her life. But what about justice for Kendra? Her family will tell you that no prison sentence, no death penalty, no verdict can bring her back. Nothing can undo what happened in that parking garage on September 2nd, 2015. At Brenda's sentencing on June 7th, 2019, Kendra's mother, Bonnie Jameson, stood before the court and spoke directly to the woman who'd orchestrated her daughter's murder. Her words were devastating. We take comfort in knowing our God has given our Kendra the ultimate spot in heaven, a spot in which you will never see. You, Brenda Delgado, have earned your spot on this earth behind cold steel bars for the rest of your miserable, pathetic life. Kendra's sister, Ashley Turner, also spoke. So did their grandfather. Each one of them had to stand in that courtroom and put into words what it feels like to lose someone you love to senseless violence. Ricky Paniagua has largely stayed out of the public eye since the trials ended. He testified when he had to. He answered the questions prosecutors asked. But he's never given interviews about what happened. He relocated to California, changed his life, tried to move forward. The guilt he carries, knowing that his ex-girlfriend murdered the woman he loved because of him, is something he'll live with forever. And here's the cruel irony. Brenda's plan was always based on a delusion. She thought that if Kendra disappeared, Ricky would come back to her. She thought eliminating her rival would solve everything. But even if she'd gotten away with the murder, even if she'd never been caught, Ricky never would come back to her. He was done. He'd moved on. He'd found happiness with someone else. Brenda destroyed 3 lives, Kendra's, Ricky's, and her own, chasing a fantasy that was never going to happen. This case is a stark reminder of how deadly jealousy can become when it's left unchecked, when obsession takes over, when someone refuses to accept that a relationship is over. Brenda Delgado had options. She could have gone to therapy. She could have blocked Ricky's number and moved on with her life. She could have focused on finishing her dental hygiene program and building her own future. Instead, she chose murder. She bought binoculars to stalk Kendra. She tracked Ricky's phone. She recruited killers. She planned every detail of an execution. She tried to make it look like a random robbery. She thought she was smart enough to get away with it. But technology doesn't lie. Surveillance cameras don't forget. Phone records tell the truth. And accomplices talk. If you're reading this story or watching this video, here's what I want you to take away. If you're in a relationship with someone who can't let go, someone who tracks your location, who shows up uninvited, who monitors your social media obsessively, who won't accept that it's over. That's not love. That's danger. If you know someone who's talking about eliminating a romantic rival, who's consumed with jealousy, who can't stop obsessing over an ex who's moved on, speak up. Tell someone. Intervene. Because what happened to Kendra Hatcher could happen to anyone. And if you're the person who can't let go, get help. See a therapist. Talk to someone. Walk away before your obsession destroys not just another person's life, but your own. Kendra Hatcher was 35 years old. She was a pediatric dentist who made children smile. She was kind, accomplished, and loved by everyone who knew her. She was planning a trip to Cancun with the man she loved. She had her whole future ahead of her, and she died because someone she'd never even met couldn't handle rejection. That's not justice. That's tragedy. Rest in peace, Dr. Kendra Hatcher. Your life mattered. Your story matters. And we won't forget you. If this case moved you, hit that like button and share this video. Subscribe to Crime Case Confidential for more deep dives into cases that deserve to be told. We're here every week with stories that need to be heard. And drop a comment below. What do you think is the most important lesson from this case? Have you ever had to deal with someone who couldn't let go? How did you handle it? Thanks for watching. Stay safe out there. And remember, if something feels wrong, trust your instincts. They might just save your life.